Now, by 2050, an estimated 1.4 billion people will be living in an African city. In Nigeria alone, 189 million people will have moved to a city, while Johannesburg will be home to 6.5 million inhabitants and Nairobi 14.2 million people. So Africa needs to start making room for them. Joining me to discuss this is Sabine Dall'Omo, CEO Siemens South Africa. Thank you for coming through, Sabine. Maybe just paint a picture why you think those people are all going to be moving to the cities. I would like to move to the rural areas.
Well, I mean, if you realistically look at it, I mean, where do you find jobs? I mean, just as job statistic in South Africa showed that only in Gauteng and in the Western Cape we have currently a scenario of where more people are employed than people are unemployed, and people will move towards where jobs are, and that is just a harsh reality we see not only in Africa but also globally. Yeah. And people will move to regions where infrastructure is available, like electricity and water.
Right. So the major driver, as you say, is going to be employment, job creation, economic opportunities.
Absolutely.
Right. And is that going to be, how shall I put it, a similar picture across the rest of the continent, or is this specific to certain economic nodes that we're seeing developing around the continent? I mentioned obviously Lagos, Johannesburg, Nairobi.
Yeah, but I see that will happen all over the continent, specifically to the bigger cities, because at the end of the day, the bigger cities attract the capital. So you will have by nature job creation, but also, you know, if you think about your kids and you want basically a better future for them, you have access to education, you have schools, you have universities, and that will drive people into the cities.
I hope they'll be joining me on my farm and they can be happy there, but I can't speak for them. Let's talk about why people are going to be, and what this actually means for the cities where these people are flocking to.
Yeah, currently, I mean, if you look at many of the cities, and even in Johannesburg, you see that the infrastructure which we have currently in place is actually not coping with the amount of people. And I just know when I was driving into Sandton, I could realize firsthand again that even the infrastructure here in Johannesburg is not coping with the amount of traffic. No, I think it's because the Gautrain
was not working, that's why you're struggling on the road. When the Gautrain is working, things work here.
Oh, right, but there's also infrastructure, right?
Right.
But nevertheless, I mean, there are more people coming in than the cities will be able to cope with the influx, putting water up, putting housing up, and also having access to electricity, but also healthcare, all other essentials you need in order to have a livable life. That is difficult to put up in the current space and with the funding available.
But of course, we're living in an age where technology transforms everything that we do. I mean, who would have thought that instead of you, when you come through the airport hailing the old taxi and wondering whether you're going to end up at your destination or not, you will find an app that says you can take you to there and everybody can keep watch and see where you go. The role that technology can help in trying to mitigate some of these things that we're talking about.
Exactly. So for instance, specifically in the power environment, if you look about townships, and I'm talking about, you know, getting information about a township in the first place, having a kind of a smart township, having decentralized solutions, not only in the case of energy supply, but also for other services. So really understanding what people need to customize with modern technology, which we have available in the digital space, the need exactly. So if I think, for instance, also on the smart grid, for instance, you would be able to identify how much capacity, like, for instance, Alexandria would need, and customize a specific net for them only to ensure that they have access to the most needed resource, energy and water.
Yeah. Would it be an overestimation to say that digitalization, or what shall we call it, the fourth industrial revolution, is and the only solution for most of the problems that we potentially are going to face with this mass migration of people into the cities?
Well, it's definitely one of the key to the solution. You know, at the end of the day, some parts will still be a physical infrastructure you have to put forward. You can't have only everything digital, because certain areas you have to invest in. But the digital applications will help you, first of all, to understand better what is required, because, you know, the suburbs are quite different, and the needs of individual livings together is also quite different. What looks for me reasonable might be for somebody who stays in Soweto not even relevant. So I think that is absolutely important, to gather that kind of information together with the people which are staying there, not something like a company initiative, a government initiative, and it's not really customized to what people require, because otherwise it also doesn't have an acceptance within the community. On the other hand, I mean, if you look at South Africa and specifically Johannesburg now, we now start recycling our rubbish at the end, and we split now at source. But why is that the reason? Because the landfills are getting filled to a level that we don't have enough space at this point in time for the future. But here you see there are also possibilities of job creation, but also usage, for instance, for energy consumption, to have waste-to-power plants put up, which reduce the amount of landfill and can generate electricity for the community. So this is not just a role for the governments or for local municipalities, this is also a role for the private sector, wherein it comes in, sees opportunity and seizes on it. Absolutely.
Are you seeing an awareness amongst governments within the space that you're operating right now that this probably is the way to go?
Yeah, I do see a significant interest, and I would like to take Rwanda as an example.
Sure.
For instance, in Kigali, they're very keen to work about e-mobility for the city, to basically have a green city index in Kigali, and we are currently working together with Volkswagen to identify how we can do that in a city like Kigali.
Yeah,